Yeah, so I think we can start. Hi, Pamela. Yeah, we'll be starting now. So with us today, we have Adekule Azam. He's a visionary. He's a leader who doesn't just talk. He builds from AI to big data. He's creating products that drive real world change. Everyone, please let's welcome Adekule Azam here with us today. We can use the hand raise feature just to say hi or the chat section. Welcome to Kunle. Hi, Kunle. We're happy to have you here with us today at the QA Tech Bro Mentorship Program 3.0. Yeah, how are you doing today?
Hi, Jennifer. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for having me. Can everybody hear me fine?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Tolani, please confirm you can hear me on your end.
Okay,
Yes,
great. Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Okay, first of all, it's okay if I turn on my video. I noticed that everybody's video is off, but it's okay if I turn mine on so you can see me.
Yes, fine.
Great. All right. I'm so happy to be here, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to come to this webinar. And I just want to say that, it's quite amazing that, Case Academy has brought so many speakers together. I've worked with a lot of these speakers before. I know some of them in one way or the other. And really, you have some astounding people talking to you as part of this program. And I feel very privileged to be included amongst them to kind of just talk a little bit about, uh, you know, entering the tech space. And, my particular topic, which of course is building a strong LinkedIn and resume for your tech career. Yeah, so shout out to Case Academy for making this happen. It's actually really a privilege. So I'll go ahead and share my screen and we can get started with the presentation. When you can see my screen, please just let me know.
Yep, we can see your screen.
Okay. Okay, so like I said, my presentation is on building a strong LinkedIn and resume for tech careers. And my name is Adekunle Kunle-san, and I'm excited that you guys are joining me today for this webinar. And whether you're switching careers or just starting out or aiming to level up, today's session is designed to give you practical tools and insights that you can apply immediately today and going forward. And my goal for this presentation is to be interactive with you, such that even as we're going through this presentation, you can begin the work that is necessary to start building a strong LinkedIn and a strong resume. So I hope some of you have your notes open or you have a pen and paper just to take a couple of things down. So yeah, just a little bit more about me. But yeah, so today's agenda, what we're going to be talking about is we'll explore the competitive tech job landscape, then clarify your career targets. Next, I'm going to try and guide you through crafting an ATS-friendly resume. Now, what ATS stands for is Application Tracking System, and that's what most tech companies use to kind of vet the resumes that are coming in before a human even sees it. So it's really important that your resume can meet the criteria for these systems so they have a higher chance of being seen. Because a lot of resumes are fed that people apply to. Sometimes you never hear anything back. It's because it never passed the ATS system in the first place. So it couldn't even get to see, a human being could not even get to see it. So you might have all these kind of nice things on your resume, right? But the ATS system is looking for key things that you put on that resume based on the role that you've applied for. And if those things are not there, it's not going to make it to a human. And then also I want to guide us through crafting a standout LinkedIn profile. We'll talk about building, portfolios, how you can get into some projects, and then also talking about developing some essential soft skills. It's not just about your resume and your LinkedIn. It's about how you communicate with people, and it's also about how you network and your own personal branding as well. Then finally, we'll wrap up with actionable tips and a clear next steps plan, and an open Q&A session so you can ask me any questions you might have about anything I've said in this presentation. All right, so the competitive landscape in tech today. The tech landscape is booming, but so is the competition because it's doing so well, right? There's so many people trying to get into this. And this has even been more affected by the advent of AI. Now, AI is not new, but the way it's being used today is new. And so what's happening is that people or companies can get 10 times more out of a single employee that understands how to use AI tools than an employee that does not. And because they can get these 10x employees, right? They're able to let go of more staff, and the landscape has even become even more competitive. So it's important to keep that in mind when you're thinking about your career and how you're going to approach, getting to these companies, and the kind of skills you need to have. It's very different than even just a few years ago. So keep that in mind. So each tech job posting typically attracts hundreds of applications. And roughly 75% of these resumes never reach a human eye. That's what I was talking about earlier with the application tracking system. And so additionally, LinkedIn has become very essential because over 72% of the recruiters are relying on LinkedIn to find talent, right? Because almost everybody has a LinkedIn profile. And LinkedIn has some certain features that let you verify, your right to work in a particular place, or even, whether you've actually been at a company. There's now verification badges for those kind of things, right? So it's a preferred platform. And then understanding this landscape means you can strategically position yourself to stand out, right? So it's not bad news. It's actually good news because we know kind of what most people are using. It's actually good news that you can actually learn how to use these systems to stand out and have a good application. Because a lot of people are not really informed about how these things work, and they're just, either tapping quick apply. They don't have a well-rounded resume sorry, they don't have a well-rounded resume or developed LinkedIn profile that is set to, attract recruiters and to bypass all these systems. So I'm going to pause right here, and I want us to kind of grab our pen and paper, or if you're on your computer, your notes. Let's get clear on the personal goals you have. So what we want to do now is clearly define the exact tech role you want. Are you targeting roles, such as, for example, data analyst, front-end developer, product manager, UX designer, QA engineer, QA tester, manual QA tester, automation. What is it that you actually want to focus on? And I'd also want you to think about where you'd like to work. Do you want to work locally? Do you want to work in a unicorn locally? Do you want to work in a global big tech company? Do you want to work for a startup abroad that you're really, fond of? Do you want to freelance internationally? So right now, think about exactly what it is that you want. What these different sorts of roles or businesses will afford you, right? And then write it down and make sure you stick to it, because it's going to guide the rest of what you're doing as you start to shape your resumes and you start to shape your LinkedIn profile, particularly your LinkedIn profile. Because for your resume, you can create individual resumes for each application you're doing, and that's encouraged, right? But you can't change your LinkedIn profile for every application you're doing. So your LinkedIn application has to be your LinkedIn profile has to be targeted at your North Star, your number one goal, like the number one thing I want. That's what it needs to be geared towards. So think about that for a little bit. So I'm just going to give you just a few more seconds to think about that. and then we'll continue on to the next slide. And I'm sorry for, the sweat on my brow. For some reason, uh, the there's just the cooling isn't working. Okay, so moving on to the next one. So creating an ATS-friendly resume. And as I talked to you before, I said an ATS stands for Application Tracking System. So there's a simple way you should approach this. An ATS-friendly resume means making sure your resume actually gets seen by recruiters, and you have to keep it simple and clear. So in the past, maybe 10 years ago, 5 years ago, you'd have been interested in creating a cool graphic. You might have seen some cool design resumes and say, oh, should I make it stand out? Do I need a graphic on the side? How do I make it, interesting? When you were being presented to human recruiters, initially, that might have been something that might have made you stand out like 10, 15 years ago. But today, that doesn't make you stand out at all. Right now, a machine is reading your resume first, right? And there's so many resumes coming in that you need to be able to just you need to be able to get your point across to the person that's going to read your resume as quickly as possible. So the ATS will first screen your resume based on the keywords in your resume. And then when it gets in front of somebody, they only have a few seconds to read it before they decide, yes, I'm going to push this person through to the next stage, or no, I'm going to exclude this person. And the thing is, you might have a lot of skills. You might be the perfect candidate for this job, but if you don't actually present yourself well in your resume and your LinkedIn, you're not going to find, nobody's going to call you back. And it's a very competitive, and especially in a very competitive market like today. So always use clear headings like experience and education. You need to start every bullet with strong action verbs, words like implemented, designed, or optimized. And wherever possible, you need to quantify your achievements. And this is very, very important, right? You always need to quantify your achievements. You need to give some kind of metric. What did you do? How much did you improve something? How much did you move the needle at this particular company, right? Or when you did this particular feature? Because anybody can say, I did this, right? But the fact that you can quantify it shows that you have presence of mind and you're trying to understand how you are impacting the company. And you have to find, various ways of doing that. So depending on the role you're looking for, you're going to find different ways of doing that. But I would say if you take nothing else out of this webinar, that is one key thing that you need to do when you're looking at your resumes and even your LinkedIn. It's just you have to be able to quantify your achievements. And so when you are as you approach work, right, today, or even if you're doing something that's volunteer work or anything you're doing, that you have to have an idea. You have to be tracking. How am I going to show the impact I made with my work here, and that's very important. And then you always need to tailor your resume to reflect keywords from the specific job you're applying for. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. Ooh. Oh, sorry. I've already gone to the next slide. So yeah, so on this slide, I have some clear examples, right? So here's a bad example. And this is actually what you might see on a lot of people's resumes, right? So you might see responsible for, coding website features or responsible for cybersecurity tasks. And you just state the work you were doing, right? This is my job description. But anybody can do that, right? So when I understand you're responsible for that, and me as an employer or as a recruiter, I understand that that's what you're responsible for, but I don't understand whether you did it well. I don't understand whether you had the presence of mind, that like to understand the kind of metrics needed to do well in that role. And so basically not having any kind of metric in your example or in your bullet point will automatically disqualify you for most positions. Let me say about 95% of the positions. And the 5% that you get in, it's hit or miss. You don't know if that company is a great company because they didn't have the presence of mind to do that, or maybe they're a forward-thinking company that's thinking differently about these things. But let's say for 95%, you're going to be automatically disqualified. But what does a good example look like? A good example is like, I developed 5 key features using React.js and increased user engagement by 27%, right? So, you know, that shows that, okay, I have a skill in React and the feature that we built, increased user engagement, right? And so you might write it like that in your resume, and then you use your LinkedIn as a way of expanding on those things. So your LinkedIn is not meant to be an exact replica of your resume. It's meant to be more of a way to flesh out and tell your story. So you can talk about, the impact you made with the metrics still, but then you can also talk about, the collaborations. You can talk about, what the feature did, because developing 5 key features is kind of vague, but you can flesh out that story on your LinkedIn as well. So I hope you can see the difference. And the good example is action oriented, it's specific, and it's impactful. So move on to LinkedIn. Let's talk about your LinkedIn profile essentials. And I've created this pyramid to kind of show you like every single thing, all the key points you need on your LinkedIn profile. And it might seem obvious, even as you're reading, you might say, "Oh yeah, I knew this," but actually, I'm gonna try and give you a couple of things that will even help you set yourself apart from the other applicants who are doing this as well. So think of your LinkedIn as your 24/7 digital presence. So your key components include, a professional photo, something that's approachable, a compelling headline that highlights your role and strengths, and a summary section that tells your story and includes, relevant keywords recruiters are searching for. So just in case you don't know what these terms are, your headline is when somebody searches for you on LinkedIn and you see the profile photo and you see it like a short liner, like it might say products, it might say building products, it might say AI, it might say various things. But what you really want to achieve with your headliner is like that's your elevator pitch for somebody that's seeing you in a search result, right? And so just like every other thing I'm going to tell you about, your LinkedIn, that needs to reflect the key things from the type of jobs you're looking for. What kind of skills are they looking for? What do you do for people? So if you're somebody that is, for example, looking to be hired by organization, right? You would have gone through uh, the role, the level of role you want, maybe on LinkedIn searching for jobs. And you would have also looked at the most common keywords across all those roles, across all those companies, right? And those are the kind of things you want to put in your headline. So people, when they're looking for you, say, okay, yeah, he has or she has this particular skill, this particular feature. You might put product leader if you're a product manager. You might put, lead QA engineer if that's the kind of role you're looking for. And you might not state some of the skills and the services you provide. So that's what I mean by headline. And then your summary section is on your actual page once they click in, and the summarizes what you actually do. And that's an opportunity for you to, actually tell your story. They've bought into your elevator pitch, and I want to know more about you. So you build on what was said in your headline, and that's to be compelling. It has to, make them interested in you. And it also has to contain the same keywords that the recruiters are searching for. So, that's kind of how you need to approach this. So other things you need to show on your profile are any kind of future projects. So you might think, I have these certifications. These are really important. Certifications are good. They show that, you're committed to your career path. But what trumps certification every single time is going to be experience. And you show experience through the projects that you've worked on. So if you've got no projects under your belt, what you need to do is find a way to contribute to something. I'm going to talk more about that when I talk about your portfolio, but you need to be able to contribute. You need to show that you've contributed to, any project. It could be a volunteer project. It could be something you worked on yourself. It could be something your friends decided to put together. But you need to show that you've practiced this skill in real life and you've tried to launched it and people have used it. And it's not just a theoretical thing. So, your certification shows that you have the theory, but then your project shows that you have the actual experience. And people today, businesses today are looking for people that have some sort of experience. And you can set yourself apart from others by just showing that I have this project experience. It doesn't need to be at a full-fledged company. It just needs to be something that you've taken the initiative to do and that you can point to and that you can talk about convincingly. So that also covers detailed experience, and I've already talked about the profile and headline. So those are the LinkedIn profile essentials. And I feel like the one key thing you should take about this is that everything is actually important, but the one key thing you should take about is that projects matter over certifications. Experience, showing that you have that experience matters. The metrics show how you think about impact, but then the projects show that you've actually done this work more than just the words you say, because anybody can write anything on any platform, on any resume, on any LinkedIn. So you need to be able to show I've done this. So I want to do one more interactive checklist, and it's a quick audit checklist. So on the screen, you'll see I've got a couple of items here. Do you have a clear headshot with initial background, looking directly at the camera? Do you have a headline and summary? Does it contain key skills? Can it explain your value proposition clearly? And do you have an experience section that includes metrics, uses action verbs, and highlights your achievements? And then finally, do you have the keywords, industry-specific terms? Like I said, you have to, like, whatever role you're going to. Let me just give you an example. We want to be you want to do QA automation, right? Or you want to be a QA engineer. And so what you decide to do is you look maybe for, obviously there'll be different levels. Maybe you feel like your experience level, you've worked in this for a while, and your experience level is actually lead, but you found yourself that you've been stuck at a particular level, you don't understand why. So on your headline, you put lead QA engineer, right? Then you go to LinkedIn, and even you can look at other job boards as well, and you will search for lead QA engineer, right? And you will look at all the skills that each of these job postings are listing. You'll put them in a spreadsheet or you write them down, and then you will look at which of these keywords, which of these 10, let's say the 10 top most repeatable keywords that come up across these posts, because every job listing will be different, but you look at the ones that are most consistent across all of them. Then those 10 keywords are what you're now going to use to incorporate into your profile, right? So you'll put them inside your summary, you put them inside your headline, and then LinkedIn has a section where you can list skills. You'll list them as skills for each of the jobs. And then when you're telling your story and expanding your story, you're going to find a way to incorporate some of these skills into how the impact you made, the metrics you're moving, those kind of things. Those things will set you apart, and those things will get recruiters to notice you very fast and quite quickly. You might find that instead of even just looking for jobs, right? Some people might start reaching out to you because your profile has been optimized properly, right? And then obviously when they get to your profile, they need to see a professional face at the top. Now, when I say professional face, it doesn't mean that you can't have any you have to change your whole appearance and look. It just means that you have to look respectable, right? I'm not saying you need to cut your hair. I'm not saying you need to do any of these things, but you just need to look like you're someone that's about their business. You took the time to take a good photo. You're looking clean and neat. And then you have a nice there's a banner behind your LinkedIn photo, and that needs to show something as well. If you have a company you're working for, and they have one, that's what you might choose to put there. Or you can create a custom one that shows maybe your mindset or your approach to handling certain things, or maybe your expertise in, for example, in this case, as being a lead QA engineer. So that's how you would approach these things. So I would like you to quickly go through these, and if there's anything that you said no, you don't have done, those are your next action steps that you can take after this webinar, right? The first things you need to tackle for optimizing your profile, right? So that's the exercise today. So just go through this list that I've taught you, that's on the screen right now, and just, if anything is no, right, or maybe, those are the things you need to work on immediately right now. Okay. So the next thing we're talking about is building your project portfolio, right? And sorry, before I continue, from the last screen as well, like I mentioned, projects are really important. So do you have any projects on your profile? And so I'm going back. Do you have any products in your profile? And do you have any social proof? So recommendations are also very important. It's going to be kind of strange if you have a work history and you worked with certain people or certain organizations, and nobody has written a recommendation for you. So it's really important to develop your social and soft skills so you can get these recommendations from people. There should not be a single company you've worked at that you've not gotten a recommendation from somebody. If you at least one person, you must have had at least one friend or one person that you knew or you that can recognize your work. So those people, you should reach out to them and you need to have them provide you a recommendation. A lot of times, what people might say is, okay, I'll do a recommendation for you. Can you write it for me? Right? And perfect. Let them write it for you. Let them allow you to write it for them. Right? Now, this is you have to be, sensible. You can't make it seem like, they were in love with you or something. But what you need to do is, those same keywords that that people are looking for in the jobs and that could have been demonstrated in that role, you need to be able to um, pull that pull that into the recommendation if possible. And if they're going to write it themselves, just ask them to say, "Hey, please, can you just mention, how I did X, Y, Z, or showcase this skill, or even move the needle with this metric." And that social proof will increase your viability a lot. Social proof matters very, very much, just as much as projects. And if they can even reference a project you worked on together, even better. Okay. So, yeah, building your project portfolio. Like I mentioned previously, role experience is crucial, and you can build your portfolio through volunteering, through internships, doing some freelance work. You can do it through personal projects, and you can demonstrate any personal project that can demonstrate your skills to your employer. So, like this one is it's a typical one that I have on the screen. It's more about how software engineers might practically go through it, but anybody can build a portfolio, whether you're a designer, you're a QA engineer, you're an automation tester, you're a manual tester. You can actually create a portfolio. You can talk about the products you've worked on. You can talk about bugs you discovered. You can talk about your approaching methodology, your philosophy. You need to show a genuine interest in your approach to work, and you need to kind of understand. You need to show like what you've learned, how you try to apply it in each of these things, and just having that kind of portfolio where you talk about these things will let people understand like, okay, this person, they're not just doing things randomly. They have a philosophy. They're growing. They're adapting, and even as I see their projects, I can see maybe how things have changed. So a portfolio can be very, very important. And sometimes you might feel intimidated. I don't have anything. I haven't done anything. It's okay, right? You just need to start with one thing. Start with a personal project. If you have a friend that's a software engineer, or you see somebody doing a project, volunteer to do something, to work with some people, do some work with them. You can volunteer for the whole project, you can volunteer for part of the project, but the idea is just to get some projects on your resume and to showcase the work and get some practical experience as well, so that when people are looking at your profile, right, they can see that I've done a couple of things. I've worked with different people, and I'm I'm a good candidate. I'm somebody that cares about the work that I'm doing, and I'm putting these things here to showcase that I stand apart from the crowd who's just pressing easy apply on LinkedIn, who hasn't optimized their profile, who thinks, well, I've worked for how many years, this should just work here, or I graduated from this university, and it's good, and I got good results. It should just hire me. It's not like it doesn't work like that anymore. That's the old way of hiring people. It doesn't work that way anymore, right? In very, very few cases will that be what it is that's going to get you a job. Right now, if you worked at Amazon, if you worked at Google, if you worked at Netflix, Spotify, it doesn't matter, right? Now there's a bunch of people who have done all those things and they're in the market, and um, it's a let me say an employer's market right now rather than a employee's market. right? So you got to showcase how you stand out in different ways, right? I'll give you an example quickly because I know I'm pushing the time. Um, Microsoft has let go of thousands of employees over the last year or so, and they've got a new category of employees that they let go, and they say it's good attrition. And what that means is that it's people that they let go, but that they were happy to let go of, right? And if you're on that good attrition list, it means that you cannot apply to that company again for at least 2 years, right? So even if it wasn't because even if they fire people and it wasn't necessarily because of performance, right? And it's more like, okay, we fired people because this particular business unit wasn't doing well, or we wanted to record high profits for the end of the year, which often happens. Then what you're going to see is that people that are on that good attrition list, even if you didn't have a bad performance review, you're not allowed to apply to that. Like, if you apply to that company, you wouldn't know, but if you apply to that company, you're going to get automatic rejection for the next 2 years at the very least, right? And so, you know, you need to be able to showcase that you're an employee that's doing worthwhile, because anybody in the market is just there. There's guides on how to get into these tech companies. Anybody could have gone to a tech company, especially when there was a boom, and not everybody's out there. So you can't use the name of a tech company alone, or a university, or of a company to actually help you get your next job. Right now, you have to show a different way of how you stand out, and so it's going to be by the products you've worked on, how you showcase that you've made an impact, and your general attitude, and also the way you network, and your social capital as well. So these are the things that matter when you're building a portfolio. So, like I just mentioned, you need soft skills. You need to be able to communicate. You need teamwork, adaptability. They're all crucial. Tech evolves quickly, especially with AI. So that makes continuous learning vital. So you're going to have to be able to communicate well, and you're also going to have to adapt quickly to the market, understand what's happening, what the newest innovations are, and AI is making that more crucial than ever, right? And so let me give you an example. You might get, after you've implemented some of these things, you actually have to go through an interview, right? They see you, they start responding to your LinkedIn, to your applications, they start seeing your resume, they start liking what they're seeing. You now have to go through the interview, right? And this interview process is not necessarily going to be easy, right? It might be very, very difficult and very competitive as well. So how do you make yourself stand out in this thing? What if they reject you? What if they say no? Thank you for applying. You made it maybe to the first level, third level, fourth level. Some of these companies have several levels of interviews. Do you just get angry and say, you tell yourself, forget them, I didn't want to be with them anyway, just to psych yourself up? No, like, you can't do that. What you need to do is, if you had someone that you had a connection with when you were interviewing, if you've gone through a couple of stages and you had one or two interviewers that you had a good connection with, right? You need to connect with them on LinkedIn. You need to send them a message saying, hey, thank you for the interview. I learned a lot. I really appreciate the time you took, and the way you interviewed me. I didn't make it this round, but I would love it if you could keep me in mind for other roles, or if you felt like there's anything that I was missing that I could learn, could you please, when you have time, could we have a conversation about this or whatnot? Those are the people you need to those are the people you need to connect with, and you need to have that ability to talk to them. You can't be shy. You need to make it happen, right? And then the soft skills also means knowing those people that you can't talk to. You didn't have a good connection with somebody, you don't start badgering them with LinkedIn messages. It doesn't work, right? You need to be very tactful with who you message, and how you're messaging them, and what you're asking for. And then you also need to be able to tell them directly and quickly, succinctly, what it is you need from them, right? So don't try to say, hey, hello, how you doing? How's your night? they don't, no, forget all of that. You don't need all of that. What you need to do is tell them in one message, hi, this is who I am. This is what I'm looking for from you. This is why I'll be a good person for you to recommend, right? Create a template for that, store it somewhere, try a couple of them. And when you find one that actually works really well for you, that's what you should start sending out to people. Um, these are the kind of soft skills you need to work. And it's also going to help you when you get into a company as well, because you have to keep your job. And it's not, and the fact is that beyond beyond getting the job, keeping the job is also difficult, right? Aside from your performance, you need to have allies. You need to be able to showcase the work you're doing. You need to be able to solve people's problems, and people need to see you as a proactive person. So your soft skills are just as important as the actual technical skills you're developing, and that's becoming more and more evident in big tech and all tech actually as time goes on. So those are some things to remember. All right. Then the next thing is, sorry. Next thing is your personal branding. So personal branding is consistency, right? In your resume, your LinkedIn, and your portfolio. You need to clearly communicate your unique value and your transferable skills. So if you have a professional profile, so LinkedIn, for example, if you decide to, if all these companies ask for your X or your Twitter account now, maybe your Instagram. If you have a professional, aside from your LinkedIn profile, all the way you talk on LinkedIn needs to be consistent with the way you talk on X, needs to be consistent with the way you talk on Instagram. Otherwise, don't send them anything if it's a personal social profile that doesn't cover your work, do not send that to any employer, right? If you have a secondary, social profile that's just for work or for your personal brand, right? That's maybe it's public, right? Maybe you have a personal one that's private for your friends that has personal opinions and views. This one would just be more about showcasing, your enthusiasm for the industry, the work you're doing, the various things you're doing. Those are your messaging and your personal brand across all these channels needs to be the same, right? And it's actually a powerful tool. So if you don't have any of these right now, it might be worthwhile, right? Creating a personal brand profile across these platforms that you can post off to LinkedIn and post off on their end, anything interesting you find and share. So it looks like you now become either an enthusiast or a subject matter expert for those things. All right. And let me move on because we're eating up time. Okay. So final tips and encouragement. You need to regularly update your materials. You need to seek feedback, right? You need to engage with your peers. You need to have people test you. You can't just do this in a silo. You need to seek mentorship. You need to seek a community, and you need to seek them in your industry. So, for example, the people here at Case Academy are a good resource for you, right? This is a community that you can reach out to. You should connect with the people that are speaking to you. You should connect with each other. And as you guys are progressing, you guys can be supporting each other. And then you need to engage with industry news. You need to learn. You need to showcase that you're keeping on top of industry news and you're learning. And then you need to be resilient. You need to be consistent. Rejections will happen. And each no brings you closer to the right yes, because you need to learn from every single rejection. Anytime you get something wrong, don't think of it as, oh, I'm bad, I suck, nobody wants me. Don't get into that rabbit hole. What you need to do is think, okay, think like a scientist, right? Or if you're a gamer, right? Think like a gamer, like it's like, okay, this I got this far, right? What did I do wrong? What can I tweak to get to the next level or to pass this particular challenge? You need to be a problem solver and think about this journey like that. And that makes it more engaging and more interesting. But you can't let yourself get down by rejections. Rejections are not a symbolism of what you're worth, right? It's a symbolism of how far you've come at this point and what you need to do better. Okay? So it's really important to persist and to really support each other. And I know that's not easy, it's easier said than done, And so that's why community again is important. If you have a rejection, if you have something that bums you out, you need to be able to reach out to people and don't be shy, right? Don't feel like I can't talk to somebody because I got rejected. No, you need to talk to people like, hey, I got rejected and it's making me feel bad. And I just want to see what I can do better. This is how I approached it. Share experiences with each other. Everybody's going through different things. Everybody has experienced rejection in this life and will continue to experience rejection in this life, right? It's just part of the journey. You just have to learn how to roll with it. So don't ever feel discouraged. All right. So our call to action, right? Your next steps are to immediately revise your resume and your LinkedIn with what you've learned here today. You need to network weekly and you need to regularly update your profile, right? And you need your consistent actions will build your momentum. So here's a challenge for everybody here on this call, right? If you guys decide to follow each other on LinkedIn, right, and start, networking, start posting, talking about what you've learned, right? Start engaging with each other, right? If everybody on this call, you know, post once a week, engage with each other's posts, people start to see that will get your posts more visible to other people on LinkedIn. You guys will now become thought leaders on the particular topics. Anything you've learned, take it this way. Anything you've learned from this series of webinars, as you're taking your notes, right? I'm sure most people are familiar with AI and ChatGPT. As you're taking your notes, you know, feed them into ChatGPT. Talk about like how can I talk about some of these things, explore some ideas with ChatGPT and then write what you want to write, about what you've learned, structure it, organize it, and then make a post. Make a post on LinkedIn, make a post on any other platform you're on, and don't be shy about it, right? Talk about what you've learned, think about it in context of the role you're trying to get, and show some interest and let people see what you have to say, what you've learned, what you're grateful about, what you've never thought about, however you want to approach it. That's what you need to do. And if everybody here can do that, and everybody here can engage with each other's posts, post some likes, some comments, it'll go a long way. You guys will get first of all, you get more confident, and second of all, you'll notice that your following will grow, or more people will be engaging with your posts, and it will become easier for you to do. And it will also help you stand out from other people. There's so many people on LinkedIn and nobody posts anything. Nobody talks about anything. They're liking other people's posts. They're not creating their own posts. They're not even sharing other people's posts. You can change that about yourself. To really make yourself stand out in this market, you need to be seen as a thought leader, and you guys can support each other in making that happen right here today. So that's my call to action to you. You can start today. You can start right now. You can do a couple of things. You can set a time weekly where I'm going to just put in your calendar. I'm going to update my LinkedIn. I'm going to share my latest qualification, right? I'm going to share something I've learned from this course I'm taking. I'm going to share something I talked about or I heard about or I read about. It's not as hard as you think to come across, and you just need to take those small actionable steps, and your personal brand will grow, and that will be a positive reflection on you, especially if you have taken the time to implement the things we've talked about when we're talking about improving your resume and improving your LinkedIn as well. So, like I said, consistency builds momentum, and yep, that's that's what I have for you today. And so if you have any questions, we can do a Q&A session now, and I'm happy to take.
Thank you so much, Kunle, for such an insightful session. Yeah, but before we dive into Q&A, as we always have a little quiz that we do. And so I think we can have our quiz now, then we can move into Q&A.
Um, um, who will help? Just 5 questions.
Yeah, we should be done with this in like 3 minutes or so.
Hey, you have less than 2 minutes.
Less than a minute to go.
All right, it's 3 minutes already. So yeah, so Jennifer, before we dive into Q&A, yeah, let me just use this opportunity to thank guest speaker today, Adekunle. Um, yeah, you guys, you always hear me talk about my mentor. Kunle is one of my mentor, and he's one of the most hardworking and humble person I've ever met. From him, I've learned, humility, transparency, integrity. In fact, when it comes to building a company and leading people, and I want to say a big thank you, boss, for honoring my invitation and yes, and for also believing in me as far back as 2017 and giving me the opportunity to serve as Summit Tech for over 4 years. You guys will hear my story when I talked about living home here and um, one of my former colleagues who happens to started his own company back then, reached out to me and called me to come, work as his company. Here's my Oga, my boss, a friend, a mentor, started players and thank you once again for honoring our invitation and for sharing your insight with us on, building our LinkedIn profile and scaling up out there. Yeah. So Jennifer, yeah, I think we can move on to Q&A section now.
All right, that was very heartfelt. I also want to say thank you to Mr. Akunle. The session was really insightful. Yeah, and I'm sure everybody has tons of questions. I think we don't really have that much time, but yeah, feel free to ask most of your questions. If you have like two questions and you want to merge them, just do that so that he'll be able to answer your questions at once. Hi, Kunle.
Hi. Thanks so much, Toby, Jennifer. I really appreciate the kind words. Toby, you're inspiration to me always. So likewise.
We have one
Okay.
question on chat. Okay, two
Yeah.
now. Jennifer, I don't know if you can see them.
Yes, we can. Yes, I can. Sorry. Also, the first one says, how can someone who didn't continue with higher education build a good CV to help beat people who have maybe more than one education certificate?
Okay. So I'll take that one first. And I think, that's a very good question. But in the tech space, you'll be surprised that this is a place for you to shine, right? Because here, what we talked about when it comes to projects, when it talks to what we talk about, social proof, those are the things that will set you apart, right? So if you can tackle a project and showcase the work effectively on a portfolio or on your projects on LinkedIn, you can get people that worked on that project with you to evangelize for you, right? And write a good recommendation that covers that. And you can have some good written recommendations, that will set you apart. I'll give you an example. There's somebody who worked with me. His name was Patrick, and I was like he was such an amazing a professional. Let me put it that way, right? And one thing you can do is that if you know you've done a good work with somebody, right? You can have them write you a heartfelt recommendation. But what you can do is that you can request that recommendation, right? And you don't date it, and then you can use that recommendation for any company you're applying to. So I think there's a couple of people who have received recommendations from me. I think to today they're still using those same recommendations in their new applications. And those recommendations are very, very heartfelt. Um, they really talk about how that person was such a valuable person and how any company will be lucky to have them, right? And today they still send me saying, this is your recommendation that you worked for me since, like, I still be using it, and it's what gets the job done. So if you make an impact on somebody, get them to write you that social proof, and then just work on some projects. You don't need your higher education doesn't matter, so long as you can prove that you know what you're doing now, you know what you're working on now, and you have the skills to achieve what you set out to do. So that's what you need to focus on showcasing if you haven't completed your higher education. Is that clear, or should I move on to the next question?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, you can go on to the next. Can you see the
Okay,
questions on your end, or do you need me to read it out?
I can see a couple, but I didn't. The one you just talked about, I didn't see. So maybe there's some I'm missing as well.
Okay, we
I
have
think
Vic.
the yeah.
Okay, the next one. What ATS tools can we use to check our resume before submitting it for a job application?
Mm, so I don't think you really need to use a specific ATS tool per se. And the reason I say this is because um, the the roles you're going to be looking for, right? What needs to be in your resume is going to be dependent on the role you're looking for, right? And maybe there are some automated tools that might be able to scrape LinkedIn and go through all the job applications and tell you what the 10 what the 10 top skills are for things. But that's something you can also do yourself. You can spend an hour on one day and you'll be able to get that. It's not something that's going to take it's not going to take a long time. I've done it with people. I think the best thing you can just do, and it's going to help you. You're gonna get some sort of insight as you're doing it, as you go through, you go through, all these job postings, and you begin to see, okay, at a lead level, more people are interested in these particular skills. And I think it's an exercise that's well worth the time doing. So my advice to you is don't look for a tool to do that, for you. My advice is just jump on LinkedIn. Um, go to companies that you're interested in. If let's say you want to go into big tech, you're interested in Google, Meta, all these things. Find out what they call the same role. Some of these people call the same roles different things across their applications, across their businesses. Find out what they call the particular role you're looking for, and then look at the skills that are similar across all of them, and you can put that into a spreadsheet. Actually, what I can do is I actually have a automated spreadsheet that does this, right? So I'll share this with Case Academy, and they can share with you. And so all you'll need to do is fill out the spreadsheet. It will tell you can put in the company, put in the role, the name of the role, and put in the top skills. It'll give you a list of all the skills you can put in. And then on the next sheet, on that particular spreadsheet, it will give you, it will tell you what the most common ones across them. So you don't have to manually check that yourself. So I can share that with the Case Academy, and they can share that with you. Okay, I see. I see one that says, let's say you're already in the tech industry as a project manager and you picked interest in QA and you want to transition into that field. How do you optimize your LinkedIn profile or resume to get QA jobs? This is actually a very good question. So if you're trying to move into if you're trying to make a transition into another part of tech or just any tech role, really, you need to look at the same thing I've been saying, and go through all the skills of the role you're trying to transition to. Then look at your own employment and work history and see what skills are transferable, right? And so what you need to be able to do is to, when you're filling out your resume, right? You wouldn't talk, for example, your project manager, you wouldn't talk about all the project management impact and metrics you've done. You would talk about any skills, any transferable skills that you see aligned with both the QA and the project management field, and there will be some. And you focus on those things and say, I have demonstrated these things in each of these roles, right? And if you have demonstrated these things in each of these roles, right, you can now use your LinkedIn to kind of flesh it out to tell your story about it. Because I told you your LinkedIn will be your North Star. You can only focus on one thing, right? And that's how you need to be able to showcase that, okay, I have transferable skills. I'm very good at those transferable skills. And I've also done some work, some projects that showcase that I can actually do this QA work. That's how you will be able to transition, right? You have to be compelling, and it might be a bit harder for you than maybe for someone else who's been doing solely QA. But if you can show the fact that you have work experience generally, right, is actually always a plus, right? So you might find that you will have you might have a better starting point than somebody who's coming in fresh, let's say, and has no work experience, right? And if you can show that you've demonstrated those skills well, and you can still show the metrics and the impact you've made, that's the best way you can use to transition into any role, not just QA, but if you're a project manager, you want to go into product or going to QA or going to customer success or whatever it is, you just need to find the common ground between the roles, look at this top 10 skills across those roles, and then show how you demonstrated those skills. Those need to be on your resume, and those need to be on your LinkedIn as well. Okay, so you said another one is, sorry. Let's say you're already in the tech industry. No, okay, I think I've done this one. So while building our portfolio, aside personal projects, how about projects that one has worked on in the current or previous firm? Can that be added, or does that have to be solely a personal project from this? Of course, you can definitely work on projects that you have worked on in the current and previous firm. I think the number one thing you need to understand is, what can be shared and what can't be shared. And if your project as a whole, right, maybe there's some kind of confidentiality clause or something about that you can't share it, you can still share the type of work you did and how you move the metric in that work, the kind of things you were doing in that role. If you can't talk about the whole subject broadly, because it's there's some kind of confidentiality clause. But definitely, a project at a current firm or previous firm, that is absolutely great. It can definitely be added to your portfolio. Okay. How will you be able to measure the exact metrics for each role? Okay, so this is something that's very good. And there's a guy called James Gunaka. He's the head of Product Tank in London. And so we asked him the same question. It's like, okay, we've gone, like, how do we measure these things? As a product manager, you're meant to be tracking metrics, right? So it's actually something you're supposed to do. And so you should be doing that. Once you become conscious that this is important for your career, it's something that you should be doing. It's part of your job description anyway, right? So, that alone is settled. But he said that if before you were cognizant of the fact that you were meant to be doing this, what do you do? Like, so that's before you realize that you had to be tracking the track. He said, okay, talk either if you have some people at old firms that are still there, maybe you can talk to them to see how things went. You can get some things. And he says, if you can't figure it out, take a educated guess. Take an educated guess, right? And he says a lot of people in this industry will take an educated guess. They can't remember, but you can there'll be some things that you will remember. So use that to help do your educated guess. If you take an educated guess, it might not be 100% accurate, but at the same time, most people are not going to be able to vet the information you put into those things. But just make sure that, because if someone should ask about that, right, you need to be able to talk about how you came by that number or that metric, how you're able to measure that. So that's very important. So when you're taking your educated guess, you need to also make sure that you understand why that metric could move in such a way. And it's somewhat realistic. It might not be 100% accurate, but you can explain how you got to that number, and that's what's most important.
Okay, thank you, Kunle. Maybe we could do 2 more questions and then we round up. We still have 3 questions in the Q&A section. Okay, this one says, how many pages can a resume have?
Maximum 2 pages. Should not
Okay.
go more than 2 pages. Yep.
All right. Are there any open source projects you can recommend to QA engineers? Because I think it's quite easier for devs to contribute to open source than QA.
So I think what you might want to do is, just reach out to anybody, like, because every like devs can just pull out something and do it. But like if you see a particular fork of an open source project, and people might be you might see, especially on GitHub, you might see that people are having issues. They're writing issues about, hey, this doesn't work or that doesn't work or everything. You can go in there and you can actually just talk to the person and say, hey, let me go ahead and test this for you and let me see what's going on. Right? I want to partner with you to solve these particular problems. Right? So you just need to be proactive in your approach, a bit bold. And then another thing is, if you're finding it difficult to get onto an open source project, right? There are a lot of hackathons going on. Hackathons usually there's some platforms like even NVIDIA, right? For example, for AI, they have a lot of AI hackathons, and what they end up doing is they tell you to just basically form a team, and sometimes you just have to you can find the team members on that particular platform, right? So it's not like you have to come with a made team. You can see some people who are forming a team, and they'll show that they're looking for people. They'll say that we're looking for someone to join this team. Offer your services as a QA, as a QA there, right? Say, hey, I would like to do QA for this project. I know it's a hackathon. I just want to make sure that this thing will work. I'll help you. I'll help test all the code that's going through here, um, um, so that we deliver the best possible project. So I did a course with Marilyn Nika. Marilyn Nika works at Google. She's a lead AI product manager, and she said that the best way to get into AI product management, as somebody, even if you've had 10 years of experience in product management, a lot of these AI product management roles, for example, will ask you for 5 years experience or some projects doing some certain things. You're like, how do I get this experience if nobody's going to hire, even though I have this 10 years? And she said, you need to go to these hackathons or to these group builds. There are platforms that do this, and you need to just volunteer your services to somebody and create a team, form a team. You can even be the first one to create projects and say, hey, looking for a team to do this. You post it on the platform, and other people who are looking to do the same thing will join. You can look for people on LinkedIn. You can create a post. You can post in Reddit subgroups. There's a lot you can do. You just need to keep on pushing, and you'll be able to get one. And I think it's just not keeping yourself in a box, but really thinking like, how can I actually, how can I be bold, and how can I get to work on these things with these people? And sometimes it means being a leader. Sometimes we want to be led, but sometimes you need to lead.
All right, thank you for that. So the last one says, please kindly shed light on how you can make your LinkedIn headline position you as a solution to a company's problem rather than a job seeker.
Okay. So what you can do is you can research the company, research what their problem is in a particular problem space. Depending on the company, they might have multiple problems. And then you can see where they're weak, and again, I said if they're looking for particular roles, if there's some particular roles that they're getting, right? You might want to reach out to somebody that's on the team. You might want to network a bit to find out what's going on and how to get some insight on what's happening in the organization, right? So you can talk to somebody, say, hey, I saw this role open. I would like to, I would like a recommendation. This is why I should be recommended, and you know, this is the value I feel I can bring. And a lot of people are happy to recommend because most people in the company will get some kind of bonus for if the person gets hired. So if you can prove to them that you'll be a good recommendation, they'll recommend you. And if they decide to recommend you, you can then go ahead and ask a question such as, what I see that this role is available. Why is this role available? What is the problem you're trying to solve? What is the biggest issue you have? And if you can talk to that person, they can give you some insights. You'll be able to, by the time you're talking to a recruiter or trying to update your headline, right? You'll have something that's very actionable, and you'll be able to look at the skills in the job posting, but then you have the extra context of what that person inside the company said. So your networking is the best way to get something that matters that you can actually put inside that headline if you're trying to position yourself as someone who can solve that person's problem, that company's problem. And you know, if you have that, you can literally say, like, if somebody's, for example, if I was a PM, and somebody's issue was growth, right? They didn't understand maybe growth cycles. Maybe they thought they're using growth funnels and they wanted growth cycles, and they need to transition to growth cycles instead, because that has compounding effects and interest, and it lasts longer. They can say, I'm somebody, and you've talked to somebody in the company. You can say builder of, or growth cycles expert, compounding. I know how to increase um, uh, compounding interest in your product through growth cycles. You can do stuff like that, and that'll help you position it, because then you're not talking about the jargon that's inside the company. Uh, for example, when you're applying at Amazon, there's certain pillars that you need to put in every single one of your answers. And people on the outside don't know that, but people who are aware know that you have to. Amazon has a page that talks about the pillars and their values, and in each answer you need to do that. So if you can put those values into your highlights, then that now becomes something that sets you apart from the average application or the average person who's applying. So that's my advice, is to try and understand.
Okay, Conley, thank you very much once again for this very insightful session. And I like that Conley mentioned that we should show up. We need soft skills here. And like we've been saying from the beginning of the webinar, I'm sure we've all taken one or two out of today's session. Go on LinkedIn and post it, tag us during the conversation. We'll be sure to repost, would engage with your post. And have a good night, everyone. See you on the WhatsApp group if you have more questions. Bye, everyone.